Get some more light in that area. It's a little better. Yeah, we're live. 7:36. Little bit late. Not too late. Ever too late. So tonight we're going to talk about the hopefully maybe for the final time for a while, the M90 carbureted thing. And there are a couple things I want to touch on that I didn't touch on in the video, in the main video. And that's that there are issues with this thing. And while it might seem like a good idea, and it would be totally something that you should take the duct, somebody should do and take the duct tape drags or wherever. The difference between running it like I did, running it on the engine dyno and making it work and even making lots of runs on it, which I did make a lot of pulls on it. But that doesn't mean it's something I would put in a car and go drive around. It obviously, it sticks out of the hood, which a lot of guys don't have problems with. Tunnel ramps stick out of the hood. That's not a problem. But there are other issues I didn't talk about, and those involve fuel. One of the comments that were fairly common and rightfully so, and that's that when we get fuel go through these blowers, they have the possibility of eating away all of the grease for the bearings, because the bearings are not sealed, and they have grease in them. We know because we kind of repacked. I mean, I just stuck a bunch more grease in there. Basically, I don't want to say that. I don't want to get overly technical. I did not repack them. I did not take them out. I did not replace them. I just stuck more grease in there and then we put them in. Probably not ideal, but I figure better than not doing that. And we like to try to tape them up and cover them when I was doing the grinding and stuff, but I have to be honest, I didn't do that every time. So I don't know how long that would last, but it's a, I think there's something to be said for, and there's an actual concern there that's valid, because if you get enough fuel flow through there, how you clean grease off. Gasoline works fairly well to do that. It has wonderful properties. Obviously, we're theoretically, not theoretically, we are cooling the charge. We're theoretically making the blower more efficient by sealing up some of the gaps and having the blower seal better with liquid in there. So some good things are happening, but that definitely is a potential. So if you ran it long term, I would be curious to see, how much grease, like run it for, I don't know what it would take, an hour, 10 hours, 24 hours, whatever it take, the equivalent of driving it on the street. I'd like to see how much grease we get, from that fuel wash, how much it would take it out. Like, will it eat it all the way in 20 minutes? Will it eat it all the way in 20 days? How long would it take? I'd be curious to see. And maybe it doesn't do it at all. Maybe the blowers, the way that they move, maybe they're protecting it from most of the fuel, and that at best we get small particles or vapor in there, and maybe it doesn't take it away. I don't know. I'd like to test that and see, but that definitely is a potential. But the other thing, and I know that this is, I saw this happen on the dyno, so we know that this is right. We know that this is definitely a thing, and that's that fuel accumulation in the blower, because this blower was not designed to have fuel run through it. We know that because this was put on a combination where they have fuel injectors down at the port. Fuel is not supposed to go through this. And that's evident in the way that they shaped the inlet and the discharge and where everything is, because there's lots of areas for fuel to puddle in there. And it did. We know that because it backfired a couple of times and fuel just sprayed out of various places. And every time after I would shut the motor off and leave it there, fuel would come out. So it looked like it was an SR-71. It's very awesome when it's all working and running. But when it's sitting there static, there is fuel coming out. So that's definitely something that you would have to deal with. So if you get any kind of backfire and there's fuel in there, it's obviously going to make the situation worse. I would imagine when the bypass valve is closed, which is that wide open throttle, that we get fuel puddling on top of the bypass valve. And then when it opens back up, when we let off the throttle, it opens back up, then it dumps a bunch of fuel in there. And so fuel probably gets caught in the well, probably it's not going to get caught in the, I don't think it will get caught in the high ram too much. I mean, that should be all okay, but definitely getting caught in the blower itself and sitting there or coming out, leaking out. And it definitely did that. So and it happened with both blowers or both blower carburetor positions with both of the different blowers that I ran, because they're different blowers. So running the carburetor feeding into the inlet of the blower, there was lots of fuel accumulation there. And then on the top also. So it wasn't just that it came in the end and found places to accumulate. And this would continue to happen, obviously, as we had a constant fuel supply from the carburetor. And the more fuel we put in there, the more problematic this becomes, right? So that's definitely, and it makes me think of the Big Bang stuff too, because I get guys that ask all the time, oh, well, you know, can I run? Will this thing you know, be safe at 1,500 horsepower? Will it last a long time? No. Were you understanding what we were trying to do here? We were seeing at what point on the Big Bang motor where we could run it at what power level, where just one run at that power level would break the motor. Not with detonation, not with something bad happening, just too much strength. That was the design goal. Whether or not we actually achieved that, the more that I look back at this, I wonder about that. But let's say we got to that point. And if we did, you don't want to run it there, because you can't run it there for very long. Theoretically, you could run it there. You could make one pass like that. Now, we know that guys are running them at this kind of boost / power level and making passes like that. So we know that there's probably more there. But at whatever point that is, that's not a reliable thing. So not only do they want because we have different levels here. We see, like on the Big Bang thing, oh, dude, that was cool. I can't believe it made that much power. I can't believe it would even make one run at that power. That's awesome. And then guys are like, oh, well, look, I get guys misquote these things all the time. Oh, Richard made 1,500 with a 4.8 or a 5.3, and he didn't even know that it was a 4.8 or 5.3. I'm like, yeah, so far none of that stuff is accurate, except me not knowing whether the first one was a 4.8 or a 5.3, but it never made that much power. The 4.8s and 5.3s made much less. You know, it didn't blow up spectacularly. Just all of the things. But they want that to happen. Okay, you made this much power. Okay, great. Now, can I drive it every day? And can I take it to the track all the time? And will it be perfectly reliable? No, it's not going to be any of those things. And that's just like this carbureted deal with the blower. You know, the carburetor that when I put the carburetor on top, when Jason welded this thing up and put the carburetor on top, and I did all the grinding to make it work, I was amazed that it just worked. So that was that was the bar that I set. Like, will it spin? Will it go in there and spin and make boost and make runs? And then once you get over that hurdle, then we spun it faster and faster and faster and made more and more power and more boost and you know, tried different things. But that doesn't mean I would take that and put it on a car and then just try to drive, you know, to New York from California. That's not a thing. But guys want that to be a thing. They want all of this magic, even though what you're doing is just more of a gee whiz exercise. It's not something that you could go out and you know, last forever. If you want something that you can go out and last forever, you should have a stock motor, because we know that those will do that. But that doesn't, I'm not going to stop doing these things. Obviously, we'll do more, you know, more M90 things and more carbureted M90 things. More carbureted M90 things on other motors besides LS motors, because there are other motors besides LS motors, and those need to happen now. I'm pretty much all M90 LS out, with the exception of the upcoming. I'm sure I'm going to do twins, so that will be something neat, and that will be different enough that people will like that. But in the meantime, I've got to do some other things. But just know that when you do crazy things like that, that just because they work once doesn't mean they work all the time. And you honestly shouldn't expect that, which is a good position to be in, because then if it does work out and it keeps running and keeps working and somehow mysteriously, you know, functions and continues to last, then you should be amazed by it. It shouldn't be every day. Like every time I run this 5.3 and it keeps going, and every time I run it to 7,700, I expect it to break. Every time. I'm like, I'm sure that this is the last run. And yet it just keeps going. So I'm amazed every time. And I'm thankful for the junkyard horsepower gods that thing continues to live. And now we're running lower RPM, but with boost and stuff. And not a lot, you know, 7 pounds really isn't very much boost. One of the guys made an interesting observation, and I put it in the video so that people would get that information. But when we ran the Gen 3 M90 blower, with the high ram and the 3.8 pulley, it essentially made NA power. In fact, it made less than NA power. And that's what it did the very first time I ran all this. Now, it made a lot less when I tested that because it didn't have timing in it. But it made less than NA power. And the guy couldn't understand why. And I tried to explain to him. I said, look, here's why. The difference between the NA run and this run, there are some differences that we need to look at. First of all, different intake manifolds. One of them is a truck manifold. One of them is a high ram. And since we're only running this thing to 6,000 or 6,500 RPM, the truck manifold is going to be better. Maybe not a lot, but certainly some. It's going to be better. It's definitely going to have more torque in the middle part of the curve. So it's going to be up. The other thing is the blower is not making any boost. It made 0.7 pounds and actually made less than 0.7 pounds out at the horsepower peak. It made 0.7 pounds on the load in. So it made a squinch of boost. That's an official term, a squinch. It made a squinch of boost at the beginning and then dropped off to 97 kPa. So theoretically, lower than wide open throttle. So it made restricted NA power or NA boost at the top. So that should give you an idea of where it is in terms of boost. There wasn't any. The other thing is that we have to drive the supercharger. So whatever it takes to drive that supercharger at that combination of blower speed and flow, and we didn't have very much boost, so that makes the flow go up quite a bit. So whatever parasitic loss there is that it takes to drive that, we have to subtract that from the total. So that's why it did what it did. So it took more pulley to get it. It took the 3.0 pulley for this boosted combination to surpass the NA combination, which is why I also ran the 2.6, because we wanted to have something that actually made boost. We made 7 pounds down low, and it made 100 or 150. It made as much as 150 foot-pounds extra torque compared to the NA one. So it was kind of doing what it's supposed to do down low. And then the boost tapered off to about 4 pounds or something, or 4.5 pounds. So again, we have that, and we have to subtract the amount that the blower makes, because the blowers, particularly one where you're using it, and it's very, very restrictive because the inlet side of this blower and really the discharge side, the whole blower assembly doesn't flow well. So when we have a restricted blower, it's not going to follow the formula. It's not going to do what a turbo does, especially a bigger turbo that can easily support this power. If we were to put a 500 horsepower turbo on this, we'd see a similar thing. We'd see a falling boost curve. It can't support the boost out there where it wants to make power. Oh, I'm going to run 15 pounds on this turbo. Well, you're not going to run 15 pounds on that turbo, because that turbo won't support 15 pounds on that NA combination. It will do it down at 3,000. It might do it at 3,000. It's not going to do it at 6,000 or 7,000, where the thing really wants to make power. So you won't get the formula in that kind of instance. It's the same thing with this blower. The blower just doesn't flow enough, which is one problem. And also there's parasitic loss associated with driving it. So it won't happen with the blower. We did have intercooling, sort of, because we had the fuel going through it. So that's a benefit, but it didn't have like a functional air to water intercooler, which is, or even a good air to air, which is necessary to reach the formula also. So these were all things that I had to cover in this discussion with this gentleman that didn't understand what was going on here. Why didn't it even make NA power? Like, well, it's a V6 blower on a V8 for one thing. But the more that I run this, the more that I like it, and the more that I realize that the M90 has a home on a lot of stuff, I think. So let's see how you guys are doing. I just got back from the soccer game. My son's team won again, so it was awesome. Richard, what lifters do you recommend? I run the stock lifters that come with the wrecking yard motors. Most people use LS7, like real LS7 lifters, not the offshore brands. Or some guys run Morels, I think. Dean, what's up? Watch out for foreigners. Dean says with a big kiwi. Julius, what's up? Gonna make me put a M90 instead of a mild turbo on my build. What build is that, Taylor? There's, I mean, we're doing a lot of M90 stuff. That doesn't mean it's the best thing. Turbos make a lot of power. I think an M90 on a 300. Are you talking about the 300 Ford? The dreaded circle thingy. NA. 4 psi is not enough boost. No, it's not. And 0.7 psi is even worse. An M112 on a Ford. An M90 is more than enough for a 300 inline Ford. What's a 300 inline Ford rated at 110 or 120 horsepower or something? Dean, I like that. You're enriching. I need to have a shirt that says that, right? Let me enrich your life. John! Cool guys here. I'd rather a supercharger over turbo for my driver. I'd like to have a supercharger on my truck, which, by the way, I put the M90 on the truck. I'm just letting you know. It's not on there now, but we put it on down at West Tech. So you guys will be seeing that. How do you think it would work on a Chevy 4.3? I think it would work fantastic. It works well on the 3.8, and they make similar NA power. Alan wants to know if anybody knows the block casting number for the LSA block, for the LSA specific block. Dodgy Brothers, what's going on, man? Stock bottom end, LM7, 223, 226. So I'm going to scroll back, Taylor. I remember asking you a question. I'm going to see what that was. Oh, an M90 on it? Yeah. It'd have to be a Gen 5, and it'd have to be a modified one, probably. Otherwise, a turbo is going to be better. Like to see the Mazda Miller Cycle supercharger repurposed. Yeah, they're just really, really rare and hard to find. Dustin, 5.7 versus 6-inch rods, I-beam versus H-beam, planning on adding a supercharger to my small block. Like what kind of supercharger? And not really, I don't care what kind it is. I care what level it is. What power output are you looking for? The power output's going to determine what you want, whether you want an H-beam or you step up to an I-beam. The 5.7 versus 6-inch rod is going to be more availability and piston combo that you want. The rod ratio has all but no effect on anything. Uh-oh, John. Minus 20. Took out my starter and idle air, so my Volvo's been down waiting on parts. Would you daily at M90 LS? Yeah. Yeah, no, that would be fantastic. That's why I wanted to put it on my truck. An M90 is, I think, perfect for a stock 4.8 or 5.3. I think it's ideal. Right now, I've got the awkward part of boost weather season where the engine is happy with the tires. Yeah. Well, you don't need traction. You just need more power, right? Richard, you can use the M90 on smaller engines. Yes, a number of them. Destiny, your goal is 650 to 700 horsepower. You really could do that with a junkyard stock bottom end. So anything that you put in there, an I-beam or an H-beam, or doesn't matter, 6-inch or 5.7 run, and doesn't just pick any of those. All of those will work. You're not at a power level where you need to worry about any of that. Putting a set of Cadillac lifters in my aluminum 6.0. I'm building blocks at the machine shop, getting soda blasted. I would really like to clean the L33. It would be nice. It's pretty grungy. Lots of fun the last 8 days. Lots of overtime. Nice. 13, 15 hours a day. That's what West Tech is like, maintaining leaking pipes. It's all band-aided. It's like fixing a submarine. Fixing a sub. I like the tubing patches that they use on subs. It's got to be quick, man. Quick, clamp, slide, tighten. We could sandblast or calcium bauxite coat the 2.6 pulley so that the belt doesn't slip. Another pound of boost at 6 pounds might really do great stuff. Those pulleys don't need to be slick. I agree. Grip Tech has some pulleys that are like that almost feel like sandpaper or something on them. They're belt eaters, I'm sure, but for what we're doing on the dyno, that's not really an issue. Julius, oh, you guys have summer down there, 110 degrees and 98% humidity. Yeah, that's all of it. That's not boost weather. Been working all week and I want to work on projects. If you have no traction, you need better tires or suspension. If you have traction, you need more power. All right. Need to make a plate for this, for the Magnum. Kind of want to do one on a 4.3 V6. You have Grip Tech on your 112. Does it work? Grip Tech. Is Grip Tech a coating that they do to that? Or is it like, is it a spray on application or something? Or do they make pulleys? They'd have to coat it with something, right? I think that those guys were at MPMC one year. I thought that I talked to them. I should remember. I'm sure I asked various tech questions. Oh, they put cuts in the pulleys. They use the like alligator teeth ones. Lost a few kilos of weight. That's good, right? We could all do that. We could all use that. Excited I got to attend Fire Up, this twin turbo 2nd gen Trans Am we've been building. Cool. So Brandon, you have 706 heads, 5-speed, 5.3 with a single plane intake and 273 gears. What 5-speed is it? Do you have? I'm hoping that you have springs in the heads. I'm sure you do. Maybe a hot rod then. It's going to be soft with those gears down low. I have engraved pulleys for traction. I'd like to see a high compression hybrid setup on propane E95. Aquanet, yeah, we've tried that a bunch, and I've done track bite on belts too on the dyno, and I know that the guys have done actually WD-40 works pretty good for getting planting the tires on chassis dyno stuff, but I'd rather just have the belt not slip. With BTR stage 4 NA LS1 cam and stock bottom end 5.3, would you think running an S480 would make 850 horsepower and work well, or would you change the cam? That nitrous, the car is a dog off the line. Yeah, that's a really big cam for a 5.3. If it were mine, I would go way down in camshaft if I was trying to run an S480. And 850 horsepower is like only 3/4 of the way up on an S480. Are you gonna put twins on the LS? That's the plan, yeah. Someone trying to go 300 miles an hour with those 273 gears, yeah. BTR stage 2 turbo. I'd go small. If it was on a 5.3, I'd go smaller than that. I probably would go with the Truck Norris cam. Oh, John, that's that's not nearly as cool. Any preference on brand of cranks? 95% of the stuff that I do is a stock cast crank. We've run forge cranks and stuff, 4340 stuff from various places. Scat, Callie's. I've never run any Kellogg or Bryant, never any high-end stuff, but K1 stuff I've done. I've never come even close to hurting a crankshaft. I never come close to hurting a cast crank, so not a forged one. 300 sounds like you got to worry about bird strikes. Yeah. Making greenhouses with propane heaters on the pipes. Yeah, everything that I've run from scat has worked really well. In fact, I have a scat crank on in this 400 that I'm putting together, only because I couldn't find a decent, just a stock 400 crank. Dustin, Eagle and scat both, you won't, I don't know if unless you're trying to make 2,000 horsepower or something like that. I don't know what you're doing, but if it's just a reasonable driver thing, you don't have to worry about either one of the cranks. Not from a strength standpoint. Adrian, what was your comment on the 8 pounds thing? Oh, that's your project? Julius, where are you in Australia? So are you someplace I need to visit? Jennifer, after seeing your turbo Dodge build, I got a 83 Dodge Rampage. Can you recommend a place for turbo parts? Having a hard time locating. What is it you're looking for? Will stock Elm 7 live at 850 horsepower? Yes, for a long time it will. I mean, it'll make lots of runs down the track like that. As long as you have ring gap in it and a good tune and good fuel, the right injectors and pump and stuff. As long as all of that stuff is right, the power level's fine. Richard, caught up. Richard, how do you think that the Super Richie would go with injection underneath and a throttle body on top? Are you talking about the carbureted blower one with the blower on top of the carburetor? And are you wanting to put a throttle body there and injection underneath? It's not going to get charge cooling that way, if that's what you're talking about. Top end Rampage came with a 2.2 carb. I know that. I just are you wanting to do a 2.2 turbo swap on it? The guys at the car farm might have some stuff. But have you gone on the 2.2 Dodge groups and stuff? Rural South Queensland, peanut territory. He's got a room ready. Plenty of snakes and goannas. Nice. Goannas are cool. I've obviously never caught one of those. They're fast though, right? We have the biggest thing we have out here. I mean, they have obviously monitors and iguanas in Florida that didn't really belong there. We have chuckwallas out here in the southern United States. I think the opening on the bottom of the charger is ported and open a little more. It might make more power with a carb on top. But porting the lower part will help flow of the blower, whether it's carbureted or not. It'll help it with EFI too. You could tell his accent by from his typing. That's pretty astute. Located in Nevada. Heard car farms close to me. They're in Ohio. Maybe that's closer than the Middle East or something. A truck walla can. That's it. Mr. Holdner. Kyle, what's going on? I got a 2002, 2005-ish 3.8 GM M90 under the bench. If you want it, I'll mail it out. What are you talking about the blower? I've got a bunch of the blowers actually. I have 5 of them total. One of them I took apart to make the NA thing. So that one's basically ruined because I cut up the bottom of it. And the other 2 were sent off to Jokers to get those ported. Those are the Gen 5s. And then now one of the Gen 3s is carbureted. It's a dedicated carbureted one with a top mounted carburetor. And then the other one is an unmolested one. Tristan, if I want to put an M90 on a 4.3, I like where this is going. This is good stuff. You got me interested. But I have a 400 horsepower Phytech EFI and don't want to spend the money on a power adder version. Well, you're going to be kind of hard pressed to make 400 horsepower with a 4.3 anyway, right? I mean, stock, it makes 200. So are you doing a bunch of things to it to get it to make 400? Because I think if you get it to make 400, that would be pretty good. You should be pretty happy with that. And also, what is the limitation of the 400 horsepower Phytech unit? If it's injector, then you should be able to increase the fuel pressure and have it be more than that. Henry, thank you. I will keep doing videos, definitely. Hang on to the M90s because Richard's going to jack the price up. Exactly. You understand the struggle, and everyone thinks maintenance is easy. This job keeps me hopping more than my construction jobs. Yeah, I was a property manager for a while, way back in my college days, and it's a never-ending slew of things that are wrong. Most common snakes on my property are eastern browns. Yeah, carpet pythons would be very cool. Eastern browns, they're, I don't know that we need to play with those too much, but S10 with a 4.3, top speed runs 256 or 410. It depends on what your 5th or 6th gear is or 7th gear. Just like I can tell compression ratio from a 706 casting on any LS engine just by looking at it with copy camera. Sure, we all can do that. That's something we learned in kindergarten, right? Stock 3.8 liter M90 blower, 2002-05-ish. Okay, so that's still a Gen 3. Kyle, you don't have to worry about that, man. I don't want you to spend the money on mailing. Mailing stuff is expensive. It says it's not compatible with Boost, but I don't know why. Well, what they're saying is that the map sensor that they have in that is not a 2-bar map sensor. That's why they're saying that. Is it a throttle body one? And if you're putting a throttle body like we mounted on top of the blower, it is NA. It's not boosted, so it doesn't care. All it's doing is delivering fuel. 2.5 rear end gear, get a push off the line. Yeah, at Bonneville we see that all the time. Guys have to get them going. Sometimes because they don't have, if you've got 256 gears and then you have a Power Glide trans, or maybe you only have a single gear transmission, and you just get pushed off till about 50 or 60 miles an hour and then start going and start chugging away. I personally don't like that. I've never had anything that goes 300 or 400 miles an hour though. So that's not my jams. But with the Civic, we just sat there and let it idled, and it idled fine. And people were looking at it like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, the car doesn't care. I could have easily driven it out here. It just runs and drives around. They said, well, how fast does the car go? I said, well, it's gone 227. Well, where's your push truck? I said, we don't push this. I don't want to dent this car. I said, we just drive it off the line and start going. And then I could turn around and go drive over and get ice cream or whatever. I said, that's what they do. That's what they're supposed to do. Nah, that's not Bonneville. I'm like, well, that's new Bonneville because that's what all the cars have. Richard, how do you think an M90 would go on a 2JZ? I have a 2JZ in my Lexus, but don't want to make it turbo laggy. Well, a 2JZ, if you have an NA one, what is the motor rated at? So let's start there. How much power does it make NA? And then we know that it, if it's like a 200 horsepower NA motor, we know it's right in its sweet spot because that's what this blower came on, was 200 horsepower V6s. Browns and the taipans. You let me watch from a distance. Red-bellied black snakes would be a good venomous snake to catch. They're far less stressed out by people and way less defensive. Yeah. I'm not that interested in catching venomous snakes because there's no joy in that. I mean, they're like the rattlesnakes here. You can't play with them really. And so catching it like a carpet python would be awesome because those get big enough and they're bitey enough and they're not venomous. So that would be fun. Richard, how did you get gear ratios for the Civic to go that fast? Well, we have a lot of engine speed. We have a 5-speed. We use the LSGS non-VTEC trans, and then I had a 4.0 gear made for it, which is not a big change from the 426 that came in the LS and the GS. Figuring a way to cut a hole in the top and machine down a slot with an O-ring in it to slide carb or EFI system adapter on and tighten with tiny Allen screws. Have you taken a look at what you're working with on the M90? Because there's just not a lot of thickness there. Because we thought about doing that, but there just isn't a lot of like wall thickness there to work with. What are your favorite springs you use on an LS3 for cams? 230, 240, 630 lift that have good life. All of the BTR stuff has worked really well for us. And then on the 5.3 that we have where we're running to 7,700, we have their extreme RPM springs on that. This guy's next level must be some vicious cactus juice. Is it a cactus cooler? Because that's one of my favorites. Is there such a thing as an LS head with the intake and exhaust port positions flipped around? Curious if anyone has tried to do a hot inside V-twin turbo setup. I haven't seen that. If you can keep from warping the rotor case, it would work better. Yeah, well, that's all good, but like I said, there's just not a lot of material there to work with. It's mostly fin. Be interesting to flip the M90 around on the LS and have the throttle body the right way where God and nature intended it. Make a jack shaft for the pulley like the Magnuson kit. That'd be really expensive. 2JZ NA makes 215 according to the internet. Yeah, so an M90 would be, that's right in its wheelhouse. Bought a Volvo wagon the other day and ended up selling it before I got it home. Ended up making a little over 2 G's. Nice. First ever M90 Jeep 4-liter. I'm sure somebody has done that, right? Saw somebody JB weld a carb adapter on top of a supercharger. Guys were telling me that that's what I should have done, was weld it or epoxy it or JB weld it, but it all worked out. Do you have TikTok? No, I'm not on TikTok. Is 6,500 a good shift point for a BTR stage 4 truck cam on otherwise bone stock Gen 3? Do you have a Gen 4 5.3? Do you have a Trailblazer SS intake manifold on it? Or do you have an early truck intake manifold on it? The 122 Cadillac blower has the same problem. Pulley on one side, throttle body on the other. Yeah. But all that stuff can be overcome. LR4 single billet 480 22 220R. What's a 220R? Is that the cam? Any chance of running GT45s on L96 6 liters to see what happens? What is it you're wanting? What is it you're wondering what's going to happen? Haven't I run GT45s on 6 liters before? We know what the horsepower potential is on a 6-liter. It's like 750. Southern Speed, are you trying to run a lot of RPM in this thing on this 4.8? And are you trying to make more than 1,000 horsepower? So is it Mr. 3-phase? Is it a 90 millimeter throttle opening? That'll tell you if it's a later manifold. 6,500 is fine. Yeah, it's going to make power past that. I'm getting confused on. Let me. Yeah, stage 4 truck cam. Yeah, it's going to make power past 6,500. Carpet snakes are plentiful and chill. The only other non-venomous snake where I'm at is a green tree snake. They're very defensive. I've seen the odd. Ooh, a king brown. Twice I've seen a death adder. I would love to see all of those. I mean, I think that they're cool. But like I said, I've caught a lot of rattlesnakes, but it's just not fun. They're not fun to play with. 6,500, 7,000, under 1,000 wheel horsepower. Yeah, it's definitely going to be on a 220 cam and a 4.8. It's definitely going to be 7,000. Seriously, looking at the 2020 Rover electric turbo. The only thing we have out here in New Hampshire are timber rattles. Only half of the southern part of the state. New Hampshire has more than just timber rattlesnakes, right? Are you saying that that's the only venomous snake you have? Because I've never seen a state that only has one kind of snake, but a 4L60 cannot handle very much power. That you can break them by putting a camshaft in a stock motor. Rattlesnakes barbecue up nice. I've never tried rattlesnake. What about a 700 R4? A 700 R4 is like a 4L60, I think. It's the only venomous snake. Okay. Usually there are multiple rattlesnakes in areas. New Hampshire's pretty far up there, though. So no eastern diamondbacks. Probably no cottonmouths. Probably no copperheads up there. Richard, you were watching a Goofy Ghost Bigfoot show. That's a good combination. I like that. I'm missing an actual good YouTube show. I need to watch that. Australia has 140 venomous snakes. I know Australia has like all of them. And they're not like a rattlesnake is bad if you get bit by it, but they have snakes in Australia that are like super bad. Cyclone has 700 R4. What was the 4-wheel drive unit in the Cyclone? A 4L80 is good. Twin M90s, yes. Water moccasins. We caught a bunch of those when I was in Florida. Your largest land predator is a medium-sized dog. But what about a dingo? Did the dingo ate your baby? Do you have crocodiles there by where you are? I think I need more 4.3 or V6 stuff in my life. Right? I mean, isn't that? The Cyclone had the Safari van all-wheel drive and a 700 R4. Okay. Obviously, GM did a good job with those. Those things were pretty fast. Those things were pretty sporty. And Magnum love. We do need Magnum love. What is the Aaron? What's a Magnum? I can't remember. We can look that up. What's a Magnum make? What's a stock Magnum make? It's not 400, right? Is it 300? Dyno results. Where's my Dodge stuff? Dodge results. Dodge 360 Magnum. Holdner 360 Magnum. Baseline. Where's my final stuff? Final stock dead hole. That's good. Uh-oh. Stock exhaust manifolds. Wow, that's really stellar. 288 horsepower. That's really like. It's really getting with the program. I know my dog's freaking out if that's a smoke alarm or something. Find the beep. Find the beep. Someone shoot it. I'll ship you these two Magnum 3.9 V6 carb intakes. Ooh, crates and yellow belly sea snakes. Frequently New Zealand waters, but they are cool, cold and docile and don't bite. Yeah. When and rattlesnakes are like that too. When it's cold out, and most snakes are, when it's cold out, they're not very bitey. They're kind of chill. When they're hot, things get aggro. Could a 4.8 or 5.3 suck in a 500 shot of nitrous? Not in my experience. It hasn't been able to. It would depend on how much you'd need to make the 4.8 or 5.3 a very, very powerful version of those motors, because it would have to make 500 horsepower at least, because then you'd be asking it to ingest 100% of its NA power, and that's hard to do. I had an all-wheel drive Astro with a 350 swap. Oh, cool. We all need some Magnum. No Crocs. Crocs are only found on the north, generally close to the coast. Okay. Your cat's overbuilt. Your cat swatting at the beeping speakers. When my wife and I were at my son's soccer game, she has the little camera thing with microphones on it so that she can watch the dogs, make sure they're being good. And then so she can talk to them. So they come up to the camera and they're wondering where she is. It's pretty cool. No BS, no barbecuing, no barbecuing rattlesnakes. I won't kill them. They're my friends. Made my dog jump off a couch. Should put an M90 on a Magnum and then put it in a Dodge Magnum for maximum Magnum. So this is Magnum on Magnum action. Carbon monoxide, no. Performance Built claims that you can get a 4L60 to handle 700 to 1,000 horsepower in a 4,000-pound car. I'd like to see that. Kyle, you can run two GT45s, or that's 1,500 horsepower with a turbo or more. And a Gen 6 454 is a, cam and springs and head gaskets and stuff. You can make some pretty good power. 3 or more M90s for a 5.3 Big Bang. Nah, pass on that. Stay out of Aussie coastal waters and bodies of water up north, and you don't have to worry about getting eaten. Now, wild domestic dogs are something to worry about. That's not native. Oh, so the dogs that got loose and they go out and find themselves. They find the wolf inside them. Hold 4.9 on my Fiero. I want an M90 on it. Wild dog culling. Is that a big enough problem in Australia, the wild dogs? Because we have wild hogs here in the States. Do you mess with Ford engines at all? Yeah, I've written a number of books on Ford motors. And I have endless dyno tests on 5-liter Fords and other Bosses and 400Ms and all kinds of stuff up on the channel. I wish my biggest problem was free dogs. Where did the Super Richie phrase come from? I think that's actually from my buddy Jimmy, the guy that has the Turbo NSX with the J swap in it. Thinking of putting a small turbo on my Civic that maxes the built D16 out to 225 wheel horsepower. Wondering if the turbo would allow enough air to feed a 200 to 225 shot of nitrous. So why are you wanting to add another 225 horsepower? Why wouldn't you just do that with more boost with a bigger turbo? Yeah, T, you guys had Australia's when you were in Jellyfish, or Jellyfish when you were in Australia. We had that when we were in when we went to the Bahamas, and then on one of the trips to Mexico, we had a bunch of them. I swam with them anyway, but you know, I just was new to stay away from them. Stay tuned. Built a Cyclone. Yeah, I reached out to Tony the other day. I sent him a picture of the carbureted M90 stuff. I always point this out to my French buddies. We have no bears, no big cats, and no wolves. All Aussie dangerous stuff is small and bitey on land. What's your favorite Power Stroke engine? I don't really do diesel stuff. I've owned diesels in the past. The last one that I had was a Dodge Cummins 3500, you know, a big full size truck with a Cummins turbo diesel in it. But I haven't run any on the engine dyno. We just have swamp puppies. What do you think about compressed air for boost? They've run the compressed air supercharger stuff at Westech. It's really cool. What cam would you put in a 4.3 liter? The only stuff that I've seen that's available is the stuff in the Comp Cams catalog. Does the dyno allow for diesel motors? You can guys run diesels on engine dynos. Westech's not going to do it though. To hurry for the Metro. Box Jellyfish, yeah, stay away from those. Box Jellyfish are pretty serious. Our weather's nice. It's about 50 right now. Although we did bring our, my wife got heated stadium seats for the soccer games when it gets cold. So they have a little battery pack and little buttons on it. I think they even vibrate. They're like seats in your cars, and you push a button and the seat heats up. I'm like, wow, this is really spoiled of me to want to sit in this. I grew up hunting and living off the land, but I don't enjoy culling dogs and refuse to cull dingoes. Only introduced feral species are allowed to be hunted in Australia, except for dingoes. Yeah, I don't think about shooting dogs. I did go to Florida, though, to help them with their snake things. Werewolf, Sasquatch, cats, black bear. That's going to change tomorrow. Rain tomorrow. Yeah, we're supposed to get 4 or 5 days now. Miami 73, nice. Ooh, cane toads, those are cool too. I like the I've watched a few videos on the Pac-Man toads too. It's amazing because they always have those things eating, you know, the murder hornets and wasps, black widows, and all kinds of weird stuff. Yeah, yeah. Take a look. Go do a go, go down the rabbit hole. Pac-Man toads. M90 blower carb. So, given the budget, twin GT45s, 454, the Gen 6 makes the most sense with hydraulic roller and L29 Vortex heads. Yeah, if you want to keep the stock things on there, you can make, you know, you should be able to make 500 horsepower NA, I think, or somewhere thereabouts, 450, and then it's just boost on top of that, right? So, Dean, Australian birds throw the cane toads into ponds and billabongs to get rid of the poisons. So, how does throwing the frog in water, how does that get rid of poison? M90 on a 2.2. Yeah, we do want to run that. Adrian, what is your question about airflow? Mexican gray wolves are making a comeback. You know what else is coming up for Mexico are jaguars, which I think is awesome. Wolves were supposed to be all over the United States. There are a lot of people putting LS Beehive Springs on other engines. Yeah, we run them on the 3800. One variety bird, and it stresses the cane toad out royally. M90 on a 4.3 would be good. There's no bad answer for that. There's no bad combination. Maybe the Metro engine might be a little much. The Jaguars are cool. I would like to see one of those. Those things are amazing. Would you revisit the compound turbo, the compound thing that we did on the LS? Probably not. I don't know what we would do that we didn't do. The ibis will pick up cane toads and they will flick them about and stress out the toads. What this does is make the cane toad release its toxin from the glands in the back, and then they throw it in the water and wash it off. That would be cool. There's no way an M90 works on a 4-liter inline 6. Which is their defense mechanism when they're faced with predators. And then they wash it off and then they could peck at them. Nice. M90 on a K24. I thought somebody sent me a video of one of those. There's a company making 4-barrel intakes for the 4.3 and making them taking 4-barrel intakes for the 4.3 and making them fit the Jag V12. Electric motor driving an M90. Yeah, it'd have to be a good size one, but or something with a lot of juice. Sean, I thought that I saw somebody have a roots blower on a Lotus Exige before. I thought that somebody did that. That seems like a good application, although that's a really cool car. Australian company makes an adapter. I'm Peter. I'm currently running a 6766 and a 4G63 Evo 8 and planning to compound to a 35R for the low end torque. I think that that's a good idea on a 4G63, but not on an LS. And we talked about that when I was going over compound stuff and sequential stuff. Um, when you're trying to take an NA motor that doesn't make a lot of power, and relatively speaking, a 4G63 doesn't make a lot of NA power, but you're trying to make a lot of turbo power. So you have, let's say you have 1,000 horsepower turbo and you have a 150 horsepower NA motor. To get from there to there requires a really big turbo. Well, the big chasm in the middle is just boost response. And so if you could take a smaller turbo now and put that in there either as a sequential or a compound and make life better, you can certainly have a much more usable power curve. Adrian, what is it you're can you ask a question, or what is it you're I don't understand what you're talking about. Have you considered using epoxy to bond the tube for the carb to the blower housing? Yeah, we many people talked about that already. Power band comes in 37 psi, 5800 to 8900. Okay. The reason for a small turbo and a big nitrous kit for my D16 is to make a 10-second car without looking like it will run that fast. I honestly don't know if turbocharging is going to allow you to successfully run more nitrous. I would lean toward a bigger turbo. I would lean towards skewing it that way. I would use the nitrous to bring on the bigger turbo and make the power with the turbo. That's my suggestion. Rather than try to run a lot of nitrous, I think you will run into more problems. The more nitrous you try to run, the more problems. More nitrous, more problems. What if you exclusively ran methanol on the carb and ethanol on the injectors? See how far you can take it with no intercooler. Uh, well, we can't do that on an M90 because we have a limitation in airflow of the M90. My deal was airflow hearsay. What is airflow hearsay? You have something specific in mind when you say that, and I don't know what it is. Versus scientific results for performance, like guys that think valve lapping is just as good as 3-angle. See, that's what I mean. You're wanting to ask a specific question, but you're not asking a specific question. I don't know what your definition of airflow hearsay is. But in that specific thing, valve lapping doesn't on a single angle valve lapping won't do what potentially a 3-angle valve job could do. Every 3-angle valve job doesn't add power. It doesn't add airflow. It doesn't add power. It can and usually does, but it doesn't have to. So you need to look at what's happening. But are there other things that you're thinking about there besides that? What happens if you overspin the blower? Does it just create heat, or do the bearings want to come loose? In this case, because of what we're doing, you probably would run into a bearing problem, because a lot of times when on other applications where you spin the blower very fast and you make a lot of boost, you build heat, and then what happens is the rotors expand and the rotors will touch. That probably won't happen in this instance because we won't be making a lot of boost. We'd be running an M90, which is a fairly low flow blower, on a combination that already makes a lot of NA power, so the boost pressure won't be high. So you have to worry about rotor deflection and bearing life, distortion, creating the maximum RPM potential of that combination before something comes apart. But it's probably not going to be heat generated. I think my Toyota has a 5-angle valve job. That's not uncommon. People do that. Again, I don't know the problem with a 5-angle versus a 3-angle versus a single angle is that people immediately think more is better. And it may or may not be. If my headers have a 60 millimeter V band for wastegates, can I swap it with a T4 flange? Mount my turbo where the wastegates go and the wastegates where the turbo mount, the body of the turbo. Yes, you can. The ideal situation is to mount the wastegate in the direction of the flow. So if like you have all your header tubes come down and they join into a common collector, that common collector goes straight, it should hit the wastegate. The turn up from there should hit the turbo. That's ideal. That's ideal for boost control, which is kind of what you're looking at. The turbo is going to do what the turbo does. Most people don't do that. Most people aim the thing at the turbo and then 90-degree off and stick a wastegate there and call it good. And it's not very good that way. Richard, I may regret telling you this, but the TVS 1320, did you reference this before or something? Because I don't, is this something new that you're saying? But the TVS 1320 is from the Audi 3-liter V6. It's the newer 160-degree design from Eaton. They go for 300 to 400. It would be a cool comparison. Be a cool comparison between what, Mike? I don't know what you're asking me to compare. Anyone know if there's a K24 to T5 adapter flange? I would be surprised if somebody hasn't run K series to Chevy bolt pattern. If a 1320 is 1.3 liters, then I think that the M90 is 1.5, right? We know that a 2650 is 1,000 plus horsepower blower. Richard, this is a blower motor chat. It's not. It's an open it's an open mic chat. As soon as I talk about whatever I talked about at the beginning of this, then it's just question and answer, and you can ask any question that you want. A 122 is 2 liters and a 90 is a 1.5. So on a 112 is between those two. Mike, I maybe you're wanting to see that test, but I'm not interested in comparing the M90 to other blowers because we know better blowers exist, and it would be really easy to upgrade from the M90 to lots of different things. And any twin screw would be better. the little TVS that you're talking about is probably better. A bigger TVS is definitely better. Anything that's bigger, a 112, a 122, all of those are better. I'm not really looking at how to make something better than the M90. Because that's pretty easy to do. And on that note, it is time to go, but I will be back tomorrow morning with another video. If you haven't, please go take a look at the video I have up on the carbureted M90 once again, but from the back door, so to speak. I'll see you guys all tomorrow.